Good evening and welcome everyone. Happy almost 5784. My name is Carol Hozak Ward. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder and artistic director of the Colorado Hebrew Chorale. We have our great return to text and context with Leah Peer facilitating the conversation about the poetry and other words and music that offer a different glimpse behind the scenes of the music and poetry that is explored by the artistic ensemble known as Kol Nashim, the women's choir of the Colorado Hebrew Chorale, also under Leah's direction. Tonight's program is sponsored in large part by you, the taxpayers of the what is known as SCFD, the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, which is a seven counties, Denver at the center, and six surrounding, where every penny of $10 collected in sales tax goes to arts and cultural organizations, large and small. And we, since 2002, the Colorado Hebrew Chorale has been a recipient of those funds. We are grateful to them. We are grateful to the Colorado Coalition for, I'm sorry, Colorado Creative Industries, as well as other supporters, large and small, and your contributions, as always, are welcome. Tonight, Leah will be discussing the poetry of the Israeli poet Leah Goldberg, and a particular emphasis on the poem known as Veshuv, and again. And within that, a particular emphasis, but not necessarily only limited to the recent composition by Neely Abrahamson, the pianist and accompanist of Kol Nashim, and herself a noted composer. Not only the piece that she was commissioned to do and was performed by Kol Nashim twice already in 2023, but also the fact that the Leah Goldberg poetry was set by other artists, which is something that Leah will be exploring in the coming minutes. So now at this point, we will wait for Neely or get started and have her jump in when she's ready.
Neely's with us.
Yay!
Neely is with us. So good evening, Erev Tov, and I am going to share my screen, and hopefully you will also be able to hear sound when it comes to that. So, oh my goodness, they're giving me extra windows here. Okay, Zoom changes what you see every time. It's very confusing.
Can you make it larger?
You can make it larger on your screen.
We can have. Okay, I got it.
Okay, good. Yeah. So, okay, there we go. And now I can see all of you. So, I take a Hebrew poetry class with a master instructor. Her name is Rachel Korazim. We spent about 9 months on the music of Leah Goldberg. This was one of the earlier earlier poems that we discussed. And as soon as I heard it, something in it to me spoke very musically. There's something about the poem itself that has it just feels like music, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And so I sent it to Neely in wake of her composition, Baruch She'asani Isha, which that poem she found herself, and it also in the same way spoke to her immediately. She started hearing music, and so she started working on that, and we're going to get to Neely's process and her decisions about setting this a little later on in our discussion. So first, I want to read the poem to you in Hebrew so you can hear the melody. It is written out when it is written in the book. The title is Veshuv, and then the word repeats in the poem itself And I'll explain in a moment why I think probably it was not meant to repeat in that way. So here you have the transliteration and you have the translation. Veshuv nish'eret levada hana'ara, umechaba bal'at et hamnora, v'hivhuvei pninim ksumei orot, kavim echad echad al tzavara. ושלהבות פרגים באגרטל, אותו צעיף שחור הראי אפל, והיא שומעת אל תוגת חדרה, על בהונות רגליו נכנס הלל. והיא יודעת פה היה אחד, את צעדיו זוכר עוד המרבד, את שמו לוחש עוד חרש השעון, והוא הלך והוא רחוק לעד. And so we know about Leah Goldberg that as a young girl, she was deserted. Well, she wasn't deserted, but her parents were arrested and taken into questioning by the then Bolshevik forces. And her father was tortured and disappeared for several years. And until her mother came to find her, Leah, at the age of 6 or 7, was left on her own in the middle of nowhere on a suitcase, waiting. And so the idea of being alone and being left is something that was embedded into her psyche at a very young age. She writes this in her early 20s, late teens, early 20s. And her vision of herself as a person who is alone, who is deserted, who is unlovable. She writes, "I am an ugly woman of 22." And she was not. She was not. But this became a self-fulfilling prophecy. And throughout her life, she had deep passions for unreachable men. They were married, they were otherwise involved, they were not interested in her except in an intellectual or platonic way. These were the people that she yearned for, basically guaranteeing that she was left alone. So there's something about this that kind of, we feel the movement of it. It has an internal movement, an internal rhythm, and there's a good reason for that. So I'm hoping that the words iambic pentameter are not completely foreign to most of you. The most famous utilizer of iambic pentameter is, of course, Shakespeare. And so an iamb is a foot or a section of poetry that is made up of 2 syllables. 2 syllables make the foot. And iambic, if it's an iamb, then it's unaccented, accented, like above, unstressed, stressed. And when you have pentameter, penta is 5, so, and meter is beat. So five iambs in a line. And so these are the number of syllables. And indeed, I mean, we'll start with the second line. We'll leave the first line for a second. Umechaba bal'at et hamnora, right? So if I were to read it, tatam, 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 and again, I'm going to take this, and here's why I think this was not meant to be repeated twice. Hang on, I will make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. So notice that the first line has 12 syllables.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Leah Goldberg was very deliberate in her poetry. You may remember, those of you in Kol Nashim that I mentioned, she decided at a young age that she was going to be a poet in Hebrew. She did not speak Hebrew. She spoke German, she spoke Polish, she spoke Russian. So she taught herself Hebrew and insisted on writing in Hebrew. Her early notebooks are full of very, very interesting spelling. Because she didn't know, but she was very, very deliberate and purposeful. I find it difficult to believe that she intended the first line to have 12 syllables and all the rest to have 10. And probably it was meant to be the title, Veshuv nish'eret levada hana'ara. Okay, so let's just look a little bit at the translation. Okay, so and again, Veshuv, nish'eret levada hana'ara. And na'ara really doesn't translate into girl. It's more the feminine equivalent of youth. We don't, I don't think we really have a word in English for that. For somebody who is a young woman, you know, in the first blossoming, she's not quite an adult, but she's no longer a child. Umechaba balat et hamnora, and she slowly turns off the lamp. And so here is one of the words that shows you how deliberate this iambic pentameter, because she could have said umechaba leat, but she wanted balat, which has a different feel. And so she slowly turns off the lamp. And this, as you know, this was so hard for me to translate. V'hivhuvei pninim ksumei orot. So pninim are pearls and hivhuvim are flickers. So the pearls are flickering like magic lights. Kavim echad echad al tzavara. They go out one by one around her neck. What a beautiful image. And that so in addition to this feeling of rhythm that struck me right away, that it was like, okay, there's a spoken music here, the imagery, it felt to me like this would lend itself very much to a musical setting. And the second part starts, and she has many poems about her room. Her room becomes a character. She is alone, but her room is with her. And the items in her room are anthropomorphized and they keep her company. It almost makes me think of Cinderella in my own little corner. She creates a world in her room. And so she talks about shalhavot pragim. A pereg is a poppy or a poppy. There's another, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the other flower, but they're bright red, okay? And so obviously the poppies are not flaming, right? They're not burning, but she envisions as the room darkens, the poppies in the vase look like flames. Vishalhavot pragim ba'agartel, and the poppy flame in the vase. I can just imagine the painting, Claudia. Can you see that, right? Can you see
Yeah.
it? The shapes of the petals, right? You can just see it kind of looking as painting it in a way almost like the painting that you have over your shoulder. It's like, is it a petal or is it a flame? ושלהבות פרגים באגרטל, אותות צעיף שחור. The poppy flame wears a black scarf, but otot, it's not lovshot. Lovshot is wearing, right? But otot is they wrap it around. You wrap a scarf, you wrap a shawl, you drape a coat over your shoulders. And hara'i afel, the mirror is dark.
That's like when you're mourning. It reminds me of mourning. The mirror's black and you're wearing a black scarf.
Right. So this is you're wondering what happened that is so tragic, Anne?
Yes, I was just thinking that everything in this poem goes slowly and gently and deliberately. And so the pearls go out one by one, and the poppies that are flaming are then enwrapped by the night. So,
Yeah.
each thing happens slowly. And her name is still whispered softly by the clock. There's a softness and a gentleness. So even though the theme is a hard one, there's a gentleness there.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think let's get all the way through because Juanita has never heard this poem before. So we're gonna get through. Okay, so V'hi shomat, and she hears El tugat chadra. Now she could say etzev chadra, which has a different feeling. Al behonot raglav. So she hears into the sorrow of her room the night come in on tiptoe. Can you hear the night come in? I don't think you really can, but there is a silence that has a quality where you can hear the silence, right? So she has created the feeling to me is like the room is almost like a womb, you know, that's becoming dark, and she's drawing herself back in. V'hi yodat po haya echad, and she knows someone was here. Now, is she alone because he came and she wasn't there yet? Or did he come and change his mind? Maybe he noticed her through the window and decided, no, maybe I don't want to see her. You know, we don't know. We don't know. But she knows someone was here. Et tza'adav zocher od hamarvad. The carpet remembers his steps. And again, marvad is a rug. It's not really the carpet. It's a rug, like a flying carpet in Hebrew is marvad hakesem. Okay, but you could say shatiach. Imagine how different it would. Tza'adav zocher hashatiach. Tza'adav zocher od hamarvad. Still, it remembers. Et shmo, his name, lochesh od cheresh. Lochesh od cheresh, whispers softly, still whispers softly. His name is still whispered softly by the clock, which actually gives us, in English, for a change, okay, in the Hebrew, she has shmo lochesh od cheresh, right? She has this. His name is still whispered softly by the, right? We have the still whispered softly. We have that. V'hu halach, and he left. V'hu rachok la'ad. He left and he's far away forever. And that la'ad, and what you said before about things happening gradually, and then almost like a guillotine, right? Forever. So it's a very, very moving poem. So let's look a little bit at the technicalities of why it feels so musical. So the highlighted yellow are the ah syllables, and you can see that there's a lot of ah syllables. And some of them are because of her choices of words that she chose to have these ah syllables. And the blue highlight, the turquoise highlight are the eh syllables. You can see the red is e, not a lot of e. The most e in the first paragraph, not a lot of e, and the green letters are the o. So there's a lot of a lot of ah, but notice the rhyme pattern, because you can see ah, o, ah, right? A, B, A. Ah, o, ah. Same rhythm pattern in the first verse and the last verse, and the middle, ah, right? So this gives us, it creates just the sound of the syllables. Even if you don't really understand the Hebrew, you can hear the melody of those syllables repeating. And she chooses a lot of words that have lots of ah syllables in them. I'm not quite sure what the significance is. Somebody could probably do a doctorate and take a whole bunch of her poems and look at the different ways that she uses syllables. But there's no question in my mind, okay, look how much o, יודעת פה היה וזוכר עוד, ושמו לוחש עוד, שעון רחוק. So adding these po ועוד, והיא יודעת היה אחד, or והיא יודעת מישהו היה. She could do this without the po. There are different ways that she could do this. Again, the otot and behonot. So there's very deliberate, I think, very deliberate word choices that she chooses in order to make the text itself sing like a melody. So at this point now, I'm going to play for you. Somebody wrote a comment. Alas. Okay. Yeah. Although it na'ara feels, I don't know, alas feels so
Right.
non-poetical. So I'm going to play for you. I have two arrangements before we get to Neely's song. And this is okay. So I'm going to play an arrangement by Maor Cohen, who is a male singer. He put this on a disc in 2018. I had never heard this before until I started looking for this program. So I'm just going to start it for a second, and you'll let me know, make sure that I did click the hearing, but hopefully you can hear it.
ושוב נשארת לבדה הנערה ומכבה בלט את המנורה והבהובי פנינים קסומי אורות קווים אחד אחד על צווארה והיא יודעת פה היה אחד את צעדיו זוכר עוד המרווה את שמו לוחש עוד חרש השעון והוא הלך והוא רחוק לעד והוא הלך והוא רחוק לעד ושלהבות פרגים באגרטל אותו צעיף שחור האי אפל שומעת אל תוגת חדרה על בעונות רגליו נכנס הלב והיא יודעת פה היה אחד את צעדיו זוכר עוד המרווה את שמו השעון והוא הלך והוא רחוק לעד והוא הלך והוא רחוק לעד והיא יודעת פה היה אחד את צעדיו זוכר עוד המרווה את שמו לוחש עוד חרש השעון והוא הלך והוא רחוק לעד והוא הלך והוא רחוק לעד
So, observations.
Very slow.
He
Okay.
gave away the ending.
He gave away the ending.
Mm-hmm.
I
So,
wasn't happy with that.
so how did that change? So Juanita, you'll hear Neely's arrangement shortly. So he made a choice. What is the fact that he used the last verse as a chorus? How did that change the interpretation of the poem?
Gives it less punch.
Well, I mean, that's an opinion.
Okay.
You have to justify that. I'm not sure I agree that it gives it less punch, but I think that to me it felt like he's giving more power to the guy that left.
Mhm.
The important thing is hu halach v'hu rachok la'ad. He left, right? When we get to Neely's, of course, we know that her. Yes, Claudia.
Listening to it, I understood now what Neely was having us do around the piano to jazz it up and relax.
Right. So in
Mhm.
that respect, it's very similar. When I sent it to Neely, she was like, huh, that's really interesting, right? Because it also spoke to him of a poppier kind of setting, right? The next
Mhm.
setting that you hear will be very different from that. But yeah, he and remember when composers set texts, they have multiple techniques that they can choose to use. One of them is to say, okay, I'm going to pick out a little piece, and that's going to be my chorus, and the rest is going to stay the same, which is what Neely did with Veshuv, or Julie did with Kasher Berachti ala Nerot, right? You decide that, okay, I'm going to take some text from the beginning and I'm going to bring it around at the end, because we like music that's set ABA. It's called song form when it's ABA. We really like that. You can set it straight through free form, which is what Susan Brown did with Lamut Tzira. You can play around with different sentences and add, which David did in Valley. None of them are right and none of them are wrong. There are choices that the composer makes. And I think what we can do is say, okay, how do these choices affect how I understand the text?
Mhm.
All right. So now, and I'm going to leave, I'm glad that this is working. Okay. So this is an art setting by Lior Navok that he wrote in 1995. And I was not able to, I knew about it because Carol had given me a copy of the score. And I was not able to find a recording anywhere, but I contacted Lior. I was able to find his website, and I contacted Lior. And so he has the recordings on his website. And unfortunately, I do have one page of score, but I think it's valuable to listen without seeing. So I'm going to leave the words for you and do the same thing, highlight where we are in the text. This is, as they say, and now for something completely different. I have the volume all the way up.
You do.
Turn it up on your end.
I can't.
All right, let me try. I know I listened to this where it sounded, okay, here we go. Give me a second. Let me stop share. And share. And okay, let me just move this forward. Okay, so this will give you the score and the sound. Let me make this full. This is the previous. Oh. Okay. Okay, this is the end of the previous song. Okay, here comes Veshuv. So, and this is his translation. Which is bad.
Yeah.
Please mute yourself. So hang on, let me get you back. All right, there is everybody, and let me just close that. So impressions. Very, very different.
Very chopped up language, just like his translation. Very choppy. It was very, I mean, the singing was smooth, but the phrasing was.
Bits and pieces. And Neely, you noticed that he corrected agartel to
Yes.
agartal, right? Which we discussed. Juanita, the correct word in Hebrew is agartal, which is a vase. But Leah Goldberg deliberately makes it agartel so that it will have the right vowel sound that she wants to rhyme. Okay, so other impressions. I was a little shocked by the El Tugat Chadra Nichnas Halel, you know, this big crescendo up to the word, the night is coming in. And then he repeats, the night is coming in.
I'm just going to say it.
Go ahead, say what you want.
I was bored.
Me too.
Yeah, but let's. So when I was teaching in school, I wouldn't let the kids say it was boring without, you know, analyzing
No,
why.
and I was bored because there is a similarity in the line, in the pitches, throughout the entire piece, that doesn't make any distinction to help elucidate the meaning of the words. And that meant that I lost both the context of the text itself and didn't have like a fabulous sonic experience to stand in for that for me. And that is what left me feeling untouched and bored.
Yeah, I felt like this was a composition student's exercise, and that I don't know. I mean, Maor Cohen is a man, and yet I feel like he connected more with the text, albeit from the masculine perspective, than Leah, which it felt like, okay, this is the vocabulary that I'm going to use, and I really don't care if the vocabulary fits the text or not. You know, which I think is somewhat what you were saying, Neely, you know, and so I had a hard time the first time. I really didn't. I listened to part of it, and I didn't even. I got to Hallel, and I said, okay, you know, this is, yes, Sherry.
I think the other thing, Neely, that you're trying to point out is the fact that there was a lot of breath waiting for her to finally get to the next phrase, which then was the same. It was almost the same arc of, or lack of arc of pitch. It was like da 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 da.
Yeah, which is what so if you think about it, people who don't know how you're supposed to read Shakespeare, because Shakespeare never intended it to be read, da-da, behold, from yonder window breaks, you know, behold, from, I mean, it's not meant to be read ta-tum, 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 even though it's written that way. So now we get to Neely's interpretation. And Neely, I leave it to you whether you want us to hear it first, or you want us to hear it and then talk and then hear it again, or if you want to just start speaking first, how you first engaged with the text and then listen to it after.
I think following the pattern you just followed for the other two examples is the best way to do that.
Okay,
Listen,
so I'm going to put up the text and play the sound behind it so that we are not distracted by the video, especially since we're all in the video and it's really hard not to go, oh, I look really good there. Oh, what kind of, how is he, you know, I didn't know he was photographing, doing a close-up of me there. So, but at the end, I will play it with the video, although it is on our YouTube channel. So this is from our Woman to Woman concert. Hopefully the sound will be louder. So before we let Neely start talking, so what are the choices of the words that Neely chose? What are the selection of the words that are repeated? How did that affect the interpretation of the poem?
It's again and again, something happens. It keeps on, and she's still lonely, and happens again.
So the focus is on the again.
Yeah.
Right. And the repetition of the last line of each stanza, you know, is like again and again, this happened again and again and again, this happened again. And so somewhat a feeling of he's far away forever is not necessarily just one person that this happened. Anything else before we let Neely take center stage? And you're muted. Still muted. There we go.
Yeah, the finger didn't click properly. So it's almost like this happens day after day. The same thing happens each day in that little room.
Right. That's what it feels like. Okay, take it away, Neely. Do you want the text up?
If people want to have something to look at, sure. Other than the rest of us, that would be fine. Leah had mentioned at the beginning that when she first heard this poem, she heard music in it. And when I first read it, I very quickly heard a melody. I reacted pretty instantaneously to the form of the poem, which is really such a classic form for songs. And I think it's interesting. I never heard any other recordings of anything or any other compositions, but it's interesting that both the first composer was
Ma'ol
Cohen, that he also heard a need for a chorus. that this had to have that kind of very standard song format of a verse and a chorus. And obviously we chose very different ways to approach the idea of the chorus, but that was evident to me instantly. I knew that this was going to be a verse and chorus, and I heard a melody very quickly as well, and just built from that. Something that is new information. I guess everything is new information for the one person who's never heard about this before. Hello, Juanita. But for everybody else who has heard a lot during the course of our working on this piece, one thing that you don't know is that I actually wrote another version. And
I had heard that.
And the other version was through composed. So similar to the second piece that we heard, there was no chorus. It was just straight a straight setting of the text all the way through.
What did you call it? What kind of composed?
Through composed. So a melody that doesn't repeat and just travels through the entirety of the composition, always forward. There's no repetition in it.
Like Lamut Seira is through composed.
So and that version, the problem that I saw with that was just that I was setting this for a choir, not simply setting the text, and that one did not really lend itself to multiple parts and choral singing in my mind. The other difference with that one was that it was very minor. It was quite tragic.
Yeah.
This one I set in a major key. Again, I heard the melody quickly, and part of it is that the immediate impression that came to me from the poem was that sense of universality, which is something that I had said multiple times before, but I will repeat it here because that absolutely underscored my approach. I felt that this was not the experience of one individual, but the experience of all individuals, that sense of loss, or a sense of yearning, a sense of isolation and loneliness and being left behind when you lose people. That universality felt to me not tragic. I always view the tragic as the individual. But the more global, the more universal something becomes, the less tragic it is. It's simply life. And that experience of life to me feels more wistful, poignant, rather than tragic. And I didn't want to hammer on the sadness with unrelenting minorness. So instead, I opted to set what were already very, very moving and aching lyrics in a way that would respect that, but not necessarily further underscore that, but would instead hold on to, anchor a little bit in that feeling of this is what we all live, this is what we all experience. I don't want to talk nonstop, giant block of words. So let me stop there for a moment. And if anybody has any specific questions, I'd love to answer them.
Claudia?
Yes. So Neely, in your head, when you say, I heard the music right away, what literally do you hear?
That's a great question. It depends. Sometimes I hear some harmonies. In this case, I heard a melody fairly quickly. I just started singing the poem.
Oh, no kidding.
So.
Yeah, I was very struck as you were talking about the universality. What genius that she had, and Leah Goldberg really is one of the huge names in poetry, in Hebrew poetry in Israel. And I mean, she was 17 or 18 when she wrote this poem. And in addition to the beauty of the words, to write something that could resonate so many years later with somebody so much older than she was at the time that she wrote it, and encompass that feeling of universality, that on the one hand you can look at it and go, okay, I was a 17-year-old girl who had a bad, I mean, this is not a tragic experience with a boy, you know, she wasn't hurt. She didn't, you know, there was no violence. It was just, you know, that heartbreak, that teenage heartbreak, that the world is going to end and nobody's ever going to love me. But at the same time, as an adult, being that, yeah, you know, we lose people all the time, and that's just part of life. So that genius to encompass all of that in that simple poem. Anne.
So now I understand the genius of using Veshuv again and again, because it's Veshuv for you, for you, for you, for all of us. Thank you.
That is what was going through my mind, Anne. Yes. Because for me, the imagery, one of the glories of poetry is that it's such a distillation of thought and feeling. Well, I'm always interested in the backstories. I'm always interested in the biography of somebody. I have a very hard time ever viewing any piece of art, visual, oral, written, through a biographic lens, because I think so much of the process is unconscious. There's a great deal of conscious forming of the final product. There are choices that are made, there are deliberations, but I think so much of the impetus is often unconscious. And when you ask somebody to talk about their own work, they're probably the most unreliable person to talk about it, honestly, because after the fact, you have all sorts of justifications for choices that you made. You have all sorts of reasons why you did something, but in the moment, sometimes you just do it. And sometimes you look back at something that you did, and instead of being able to explain what was going through your head at all, instead you look at it and you say, wait a minute, who did that? Wait, did I do that? Did that actually come out of me? Because I have no recollection of how it came out.
Yeah.
And so when I read this poem, I was not thinking that it was focused on a particular personal experience. To me, it really, the imagery of the darkened mirror, which Claudia pointed out at the very beginning, the darkened mirror and the scarf, immediately for me was funereal. I mean, that was just mourning right away. And the notion of a carpet that still remembers somebody's steps just felt to me like ghosts. A ticking clock that still mentions somebody's name. It was just ghostly, whether it was that one individual you lost or the people who had lived in a space before who are gone. I felt about in that sense, you know, the circumstances. She was young. There were wars all around her. Israel constantly at war. Everybody loses somebody, and that was very strongly present for me in this first impression that I had of those words.
Mm-hmm. And I think that I resonate with what you say, and I think that it's we can also appreciate Maor Cohen in saying, okay, what the big thing for him is the hiyodat, and she knows, you know, this knowledge, this knowing. That's what really hit him, is that she knows. And what really hit you was the again and again and again. I mean, in the poetic imagery. Lior Navok, and he continues to be a composer, and he's a successful classical composer in Israel. His setting to me felt disconnected from trying to grapple in any way with what does the text say to me, and letting the music grow out of that. And I didn't,
Mm.
I mean, it's part of a set of 3 songs, and I didn't listen to 3 of them. We heard a little bit, but I didn't have any incentive to listen to them after I listened to the little bit of Veshuv. Claudia, you wanted to say something.
Yes, Neely, when you were talking about process and distillation, it reminds me of when I paint. At every stage, or whenever I come up from the studio, I take a picture so that I could see the process of what I did and where I want to go. I have that in the back of my mind, but it's so interesting for me to see the process.
Absolutely. I love watching people's process. I love that. I like rehearsals better than performances. I like watching various stages of paintings there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the satisfaction of being in the arts is the doing, not the getting there. There is no getting there. It's all a road to and a road from. So we're getting on to 8 o'clock, and I am going to share my screen again and let you see the video of Veshuv from Woman to Woman. And then we will call it a night. This. No ads on ours. Yet they some of our things they add ads to. So, and there we are.
There we are.
There we are. It's a beautiful, beautiful setting. And yeah, thank you, Neely, for such a wonderful
Thank
setting.
you.
Such a
Yeah.
such a beautiful poem. So that's all, folks. That's all I got. Anybody have anything else they would like to say? Yes, Anne.
Yeah, this was very meaningful. And I
Yes, it
just
was.
wanted to say that the sopranos need to be quieter on that ballad, because we're kind of blasting it a bit there. We got to work on that.
A lot of dynamic work to do, but I'm
Yes,
grateful
there
to
is.
everybody for all you already did.
Yeah,
Thank
there,
you to
there's,
Leah for the
there's,
opportunity.
you know, there are certain things when you see it with the video that it goes past a little bit, but when we listen to just the sound, it was like, so did you hear those entrances and cutoffs that
Yes.
sort of,
No,
kind
it-
of, almost? And
Yeah.
then there was Rachel's solo. That little bit that she was the only alto too. There were 6 of
She
you.
was not, I hate to tell you this, but she was not the only alto to do.
Okay, well, she was the only one that was audible. Yeah, and there's the high G ish. But we'll get there, and that's why you know, it's worth taking the opportunity to do it again. And we will do Baruch Sha'asani Isha in the second half of the year to do with the If Not Now When concert. So it's going to be all Neely all the time.
Oh dear. Sorry, but
All right, everybody.
We love
Shana
it.
Tova.
Thank you so much. This was
That's
so good.
Okay. And I will see some of you on Friday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye,
Good night.
y'all.
Laila Tov, everybody.
I love
Okay.
all.
Shana Tova, everyone.